In this practice, we're going to be focusing on right triangle trigonometry. So the thing that we must remember for trig, anytime we're solving for a side or an angle, is that the calculator has to be in degree mode. So that is like the most important part. You can do the whole problem correct, but if it's in the wrong mode, you're not going to solve it right. So to review, we're going to do this top part. So solve for a side. Variable is in the numerator. So the first thing we're going to do is label. Across the 90 is H. Across the 70 is O. By default, this is A. So whenever you do SOHCAHTOA, you should always make sure to label in the order H-O-A. Now, you want to look for doubles. So everything is about doubles. So X has O, H has 13, but A has nothing, which means that I can't use A when I'm doing sine, cosine, or tangent. So writing SOHCAHTOA, writing SOHCAHTOA, I'm going to cross out anything with an A in it because I can't use it. So cosine and tangent are out, and sine is my correct trig function. So sine of theta equals O over H. Now I'm going to substitute. So sine of theta, and theta is my angle, so sine of 70 equals opposite X over hypotenuse 13. Now, when you're solving these problems, you always pretty much solve them the same way. So if you're solving for a side, you always want to multiply by the denominator because the goal is to get rid of the fraction. I can't simplify unless the fraction's gone. So I'm going to multiply by whatever the denominator is. And in this case, it's 13. Notice how I have not picked up my calculator at all. It's because I don't need it right now. Now on the ACT, this could be an answer choice because remember, the whole ACT has to be done without a calculator, but I do want to make sure that we can type it in case we need to. So the first thing I'm going to do is check the mode. Now, if you have an 84 plus, it's going to tell you the mode that it's in up here. If not, you just press the mode button, arrow down. Radian is used to graph trig functions. Degree is used to solve SOHCAHTOA. Radian and degree mode do not have any issue when it comes to, no problems whenever it comes to actually solving an equation other than trig. So it can stay in degree mode. Now I'm going to go in my picture. I've got sine here. That's the button I'm pressing. I'm pressing sine, cosine, or tangent. So I'm going to type it in how I see it. 13 times sine of 70. Press enter. Now you can do this a couple ways. You can put parenthesis at the end, it's still going to work, so it is 12.2. So x equals 12.2. So anytime you've got a fraction, you always clear it by multiplying by the denominator. All right, let's try the next one. Again, we're going to label hypotenuse first. Across the angle is opposite. What's left is A. Again, I'm using SOHCAHTOA. So I'm looking for doubles here to help me eliminate. So X has H, A has 12, O's got nothing, which means if it has an O in the trig function, I can't use it, which means this problem is cosine. So cosine of theta, sorry, we'll change A to as theta, equals A over H. Now I substitute. So cosine of my angle equals adjacent 12 over hypotenuse X. Now this problem is identical to the first problem. We still want to multiply by the denominator. So X is in the bottom this time, and that's okay. It just means we're going to have one additional step. So it cancels here, and I'm left with X times cosine of 15 equals 12. Now, X is still not isolated, which means I can't pick up my calculator yet. So I'm going to divide both sides by cosine of 15. Cosine of 15 is just a number, but it's a decimal. And to keep it kind of contained, we leave it as cosine. So in our calculator, this is the fraction that we're going to write. X is going to equal 12 divided by cosine. So pick up my calculator. I'm going to do 12 divided by cosine of 15. And I get 12.4. So I ran out of space, so I'll just put it right here. There you go, 12.4. Make sure that you're dividing. Make sure that it looks like division. That should let you know that you did it correctly. All right, let's continue on. Solving for an angle. Same idea. Across the 90 is H. Across theta is O. By default, it's A. So I have an A and an O with no H, which means when I'm using SOHCAHTOA, I can't use H. So sine and cosine are out. Tangent is my trig function. So tangent of theta equals O over A. Tangent of theta equals O over A. So what I'm going to do now is substitute. Well, I have nothing to put in theta's place. O is 12, A is 17. Now, the only way to rip apart a trig function from its degree is to use what's called an inverse. So I'm going to use tangent to the negative 1. So on both sides, I'll be multiplying by tangent to the negative 1. Now on your calculator, the negative 1s are located above sine, cosine, and tangent. So the way that you access these buttons is you press second. So I have to make sure that if I'm solving for an angle, that I'm using the opposite trig function, the inverse, and then I also am using the same one. So for example, this is tangent. I'm not going to use tangent to the, or cosine to the negative 1. It has to be tangent. Turn my calculator on. Second tangent, and it will automatically put the negative 1 for you. And then you just type this fraction. So what ends up happening here is these cancel, and theta is going to equal tangent to the negative 1, 12 over 17. So I'm going to type in the fraction. So theta equals 35.2. And you're finished. So let's kind of recap the top just to kind of refresh our memories. So if you are solving for, if you're solving for a side, you will always multiply by the denominator. If the denominator has the variable, you will always then divide by the trig function. So if you can remember that, you can remember a shortcut. Always multiply. So if the variable's on top, you would just multiply these. Variables on the bottom, you divide them. The cosine to the negative 1 or sine to the negative 1, that's only used when you solve for an angle. That's it. So let's try some practice problems. We'll label first. Opposite of H, or 90 is H. This is O. This is A. By default, I have O and I have H. Oops. So that's sine. So this is the sine of the angle. So sine of 25 equals opposite x over hypotenuse 30. I'm going to multiply both sides by 30. These will cancel. So when I multiply in my calculator, 30 sine of 25, I get 12.7. Make sure that your calculator is in the correct mode, because if it's not going to work. All right, next one. H, O, A. I have A and H, and that's cosine. Cosine of my angle, which is theta, equals adjacent 30 over hypotenuse 70. Again, I don't have the angle, so I have to multiply both sides by cosine to the negative 1, so these will cancel. So now my theta value equals cosine to the negative 1 of 30 over 70. So I'm going to press second cosine, not tangent, second cosine, 30 divided by 70, 64.6. Whenever you're solving for an angle, you use the inverse. All right, next one. Across 90 is H, across theta is O. By default, it's A. So again, I have A and H, which is cosine. So cosine of 25 equals adjacent 13 over hypotenuse x. Multiply both sides by x, because whatever's in the bottom, we want to clear it. So x times cosine of 25 equals 13. So what I'm going to do from here is I'm going to go ahead and divide both sides by cosine of 25. And then when I divide both sides by cosine of 25, okay, what that means is these are going to cancel. Sorry, someone tried to come into my room. I didn't have time to pause the recording. So now in my calculator, cosine is gone. I'm just left with x. So in my calculator, I will type 13 divided by cosine of 25. Rounding to the nearest tenth, I get 14.3. So x is 14.3. All right, let's try the next one. I'm going to change colors so it doesn't kind of run together. Across the 90 is H, across theta is O. By default, this is A. 12 has A, 10 has O. O and A are tangent. So tangent of theta equals opposite 10 over adjacent 12. To separate the trig function from its angle, I use the -1. So -1, -1. Tangent goes away. And theta now equals tangent to the -1 of 10 over 12. Second tangent, 10 divided by 12, is 39.8. All right, well, top to the bottom. Again, I'm going to label. Across the 90 is H. Across theta is O. By default, this is A. My doubles are at O and A, so this is tangent. So tangent of 75 equals opposite 13 over adjacent X. Multiply both sides by the variable, whatever's on the bottom. So I have X times tangent of 75 equals 13. To get X isolated, I have to divide by the trig function, which is the tangent of 75. These cancel. And in my calculator, I'm going to write 13 divided by tangent of 75. So whatever this fraction is, this is what goes in your calculator. So 13 divided by tangent of 75, which is 3.4. And then the 8 will bump that to a 5 for 3.5. All right. Across the 90 is H, O, and A. Again, I have A and H, so that is cosine. So cosine of 20 equals X over 16. I'm going to multiply both sides by 16. This cancels. Okay, so I have 16 times cosine of 20 equals X. X is isolated, which means I pick up my calculator. So 16 cosine of 20, and I get 15.03, or just 15. Switch colors again because we're kind of running together. Across the 90 is H. Opposite of 30 is O. By default, this is A. My double rule, H and O, that is sine. So sine of 30 equals opposite 25 over hypotenuse X. Multiply both those sides by X because I'm multiplying by the denominator. So I get X times sine of 30 equals 25. To get X by itself, I have to divide by the trig function. Sines will cancel. And I'm left with X equals 25 over the sine of 30. X is isolated, which means calculator can be used. So 25 divided by the sine of 30 is 50. So my X answer is 50. All right, we're going to finish the last one by solving for an angle. Opposite of 90 is H, O, A. I have O and H, which is sine. So sine of theta equals the opposite 5 over 16. To solve, remember, I have to use the -1. So this is now sine to the -1 because this is a sine function. Sine to the -1 and sine will cause this to cancel, leaving me with theta equals sine to the -1 of 5 over 16. Pick up my calculator. Second sine 5 over 16. The angle measure is 18.2. So some takeaways from this practice. Make sure that whenever you're solving, so I'll kind of move it back up here. Whenever you're solving, most important thing is that you're in degree mode. Like that is the most important thing. I can do all of these wrong if I have it in the wrong mode. If you're solving for a side, you're always going to multiply by the denominator. So just like we did here, always multiply the denominator even if it's a variable. Now, if X is on the bottom, you'll end up dividing by the trig function. If X is on the top, you just multiply. To solve for an angle, you always use the -1 to simplify.